Hi, I'm Susan and welcome to my studio. If you're new to my channel, I do polymer clay and beads, and we are inside my polymer clay studio. It's a tiny studio, only about 200 square feet. Sounds huge to most of you, but if I get a few people in here, it's claustrophobic. It's real tight. For me alone, it's perfection. I have this huge storage cabinet in here that used to be in my living room. My husband hated it. It used to be black. And of course, then when it came to my studio, I got to paint it any color I wanted, and candy pink was my most favorite color to paint it, and always my dream, and he threatened to leave if I painted it pink. So now I finally have my dream. Anyway, I wanted to show you some quick polymer clay storage. A lot of people I see on the polymer clay websites all say, how do you store your canes? How do you store your clay? The easiest, cheapest way. I use page protectors. You can buy these in Dollar Tree, you can buy them in the office supply store. I cut them up into 4s to store my clay. I have an old file cabinet that I was lucky enough to find in a thrift store, but if you don't have a file cabinet, you can store these in like those photo boxes you buy at Michael's, or you can even make a box yourself. The nice thing is I cut them in 4. You can store your blends in them. You can store your colors in them. If you just have a little bit of something left, I just roll it through the pasta machine or just roll it with a roller, and it keeps it in this nice little sheet, which is easy to work with once again. So a perfect way to keep those. The other thing I like to do is cut them into long strips, and then I wrap my canes in them. And I store my canes in just these little boxes. This is just a box lid. I think it was a Christmas package or something, and my husband wanted to throw the box away. Of course, I freaked out. Oh my God, not the lid, you know, how us crafters can get. And I just cover it with some book pages and some scrapbook paper. Sometimes you don't even need scrapbook paper. If you have a pretty card you got and you're like, oh, it's so pretty, I don't want to throw it away, cut it up and use it as a decor thing. It's a nice way to remember that pretty card and who sent it to you. Because otherwise, what do we do with them? I just wrap them up and store them side by side. This is perfect because it keeps the oil in the cane. I also put a piece in the bottom of the box. Now you can use wax paper. I do find, however, that wax paper has a tendency to grab some of the oil out of the clay and make my canes dry out quicker. Now, most of the time I do not recommend that people reduce their canes this small. Keep them a little bit bigger so that you leave some time to reduce them so it wakes the clay back up. But I'm always using this little box. This is like my grab go-to box. I just have all these little ones that I play with. So you don't need anything fancy. A lot of people feel like your craft storage has to be fancy. It's only fancy because you choose to make it fancy. Here's just another box lid. It's got some bigger ones in it. This was some Christmas trim that was on a Christmas package and some flowers I made out of a Christmas card because I just liked it and wanted to keep it. So you can make it pretty because this is the place you play. The other thing I like to use is candy tins. If you can find these old candy tins, this is what I do with all my little cane butts. They really don't stick to each other because I put gold leaf on them, but this is really my biggest treasure in my studio. For some reason, these little end bits are my most favorite. I don't know why. I guess I've played with them so long that I know that's the end of it. And then I use, this is a cutlery tray. You know those wooden cutlery trays that are kind of heavy and awkward? I found these at thrift stores. I actually had like 4 of them. And not all of them have polymer clay in it. I've gotten better at this. This is the only big tray I have. And I basically rotate my stash. Now, it's not as color coordinated or as organized as I like because life goes on. Is it, do I make a video and edit it, or do I organize my canes? Let's be honest, when I go to organize my canes, I just start creating things and say, why don't I just use them? So it's a constant battle, if you know what I mean. If your stuff isn't organized, it's probably because you're busy creating. Don't beat yourself up, because if you look around here, this is a mess. This is how I actually work. People want to see how bad it is. It's not clean. I'm messy. I can't help it, and that's why I have a dedicated studio space. And I possibly couldn't create as much as I do if I was constantly cleaning. So today, let's grab a cup of tea, I have a very simple bracelet for you. It looks like it's a beaded bracelet, but it's not. It's actually polymer clay. So for you polymer clay people that are screaming, please don't show me any more beads, well, this one you don't have to bead. And if you want to add some beads to it, you know I'm going to show you at the end. There's got to be one with some beads because I am who I am. So let's get started. You guys are probably wondering, what was Susan talking about? She's going to make bracelets that look like beads, but we're not going to use beads. Sounds crazy, I know. These are all done with bracelet blanks. And if you're wondering what a bracelet blank is, let me grab one of these. It's a bracelet that I've basically, you can see from the back, it's a bracelet that has all these little connectors that you can put your own polymer clay pieces on. So you don't need to bead. You don't have to have a clasp. They already have a clasp on them, both ends. They're a standard size. So if you wanted to put bead embroidery or any type of technique or slabs and cut them up and put them on this, and if you don't even want to do polymer clay, if you just want to put old buttons, they could be quite beautiful on a bracelet like this. Now this is the larger one, which is, I would say, about an inch. These three bracelets are all made with this same larger blank. And this is the easiest one, so I don't really even need to show you what to do with it. It's pretty darn obvious. You can make any type of a bead or cut out anything. As long as it fits on this little disc here, you're good. Any old jewelry you have, anything you want, you can apply to these. They're fantastic. Most of the bead supplies places have these. They are called bracelet blanks. That's all you need to know. And let's do this one because this one everybody knows is a Natasha. This is my daisy tutorial for my flowers, and I've just basically applied them. Now to create a bead like this, I just basically use some scrap clay that's been sitting on my table. I'll throw some of this pretty green in there. Here I've got a piece of an old cane. I'll throw some of this in there. I've got another bit of a cane. I'm going to throw it all together. I'm going to chop it up. Mix it all up so that I have a nice mix of colors. And that's all I did for these. It was just take whatever was left on my table, chop it up, squish it back together. This is also known as a Natasha. That's why I'm going to do this super fast because I have another video called Scrap Clay Beads where I really show this more in detail, and so many other polymer clayers show this, that this is just a quick intro repeat. So you're going to make it into a log, twist the log. The more you twist it, the more intricate it becomes. You know, I like to push mine together and make it into a rectangle. I just find it easier to work with. You don't have to, but I find it much easier to put this back together. And I'm just going to cut the middle of this one because I've got that perfectly mixed and I don't want to spend too long on this. So you cut it in half and you cut it in half again and you match the two halves and you get all sorts of different little designs. And for this one, I just basically put it on a piece of paper and just took another piece of paper and smoothed it out. And cut it into these size beads, as you can see. Very similar design. So I just cut it into a smaller size bead that fit into each panel, picking out what colors I like the best. And I baked it and put some UVA resin on it so that they had a brighter color and a brighter shine to it. So a real easy, real quick bracelet. We all have some scraps on our table, just a great way to save them. And I like the multicolor on this. It just goes with everything. Now for this bracelet, this is the medium size bracelet. It comes in two different ways. These are all older ones. I've had these in my stash forever. This one is my Rhinestone Pod tutorial. And so I've basically made the little pods and put them on. I'll show you how to do it really quick. This is the same one, but rather than putting the rhinestone in the center before we start, I put the rhinestone on after I finished. This one is my little daisy cutters that I've just did last week or a couple weeks ago, so it should be right there in my videos. And this is once again the same little rhinestone pod that I did the opposite way. And these are just daisy cutter. I mean, these have no cane work in them, nothing. And look at what cute little bracelets these are, just with some punched out little flowers. And I just put rhinestones in the middle because I could. And then this one was it's sort of like a rose, but I really don't want it to look like a rose. It's like an organic rose, and we'll put this one together. Let's start out just making one of these pods. They're so simple to make. You're starting with a ball of clay, and this is a 5mm rhinestone. So I've measured out my ball of clay because I just use a cutter, and that way I get all of the same size amount of clay. I'm going to take a little Bacon Bond or liquid clay and just put a little dot over that. And now put your rhinestone in the center there. I just like to use an old pen that I retract the pen in. It makes a perfect little divvy to hold the point of that rhinestone right in place. And I have a little piece of that leaf cane that I used, and I like to pinch it as I go so that I know it's in the right position. And I'm just going to cut out some leaves to put on the bottom. I need 8 leaves for the bottom and 8 leaves for the top. So the ones on the bottom can be very thin. The ones on the bottom you're only going to see on the side of this bracelet here, so they don't have to hold anything in. They're just for decorative purposes. And the way I start at the bottom with the point at the center of that circle, and then the other one overlapping the other point. Now it doesn't have to be precise on the bottom here because that's the part you're going to glue onto the bracelet. And then I'm just going to fill in that little gap there. So I'm just filling in the gaps that are open blank clay. And now we have just the rhinestone in the center there. So we're going to cut 8 more pieces. These have to be a little bit thicker because these will be holding that rhinestone in place. And always remember to give a little pinch if you see it's not holding its point at the bottom. We're just going to start at one of the gaps there and put our leaf in and bring it down. Go to the opposite side and put your leaf in, and then just make sure you stick it on the bottom. The first couple get a little fiddly because you have that liquid clay there that wants to stick to your fingers. And we're going to add the last 4, so we're just going to go right in between there and add another leaf just between those spots. Now don't worry that you're enclosing the rhinestone too much. We can always open that up. So we have our rhinestone totally surrounded with our flowers. And you can take a pencil eraser or one of these rubber tools and just open that up. Make sure you press all of the clay in nice and tight so that it's really holding that rhinestone in. And you can take a pencil eraser, this is just a rubber tool, and just open it up a little bit around the rhinestone so that it has a nice setting around it, that it won't move. How I get these little rosettes of clay around the leaf that almost looks like a flower with the leaves in the background is just, I'm taking a small piece of clay and I'm just cutting little pieces out of it. Now I always take the end because it's always a funny shape. This way I can make 8 that are the exact same size, and I'll cut an extra one for good luck. So now I'm just going to take those tiny little tidbits. And this is basically what polymer clay embroidery is just taking these little tiny pieces, and I'll just put them in the center of each of those leaves. So I'm rolling it in my hand so that I have a nice little ball, and I'm just putting it in the center there. And I'll continue that with the others. Now that we have all of our little balls in place, I'm just going to take my needle tool and press it down and pull it back. So it kind of spreads it like a petal. I'm not really trying to make this look like a flower, but it just ends up doing that. I just wanted the hint of pink with the green. And there you go, we have it all finished up. Now for my bracelet, all I did was bake this. I put a little bit of satin glaze on these and I glued them down. This bracelet is this square type of a pad. So when I turn it on the back, you can see it better. And you can see what a pretty bracelet you get just using a few rhinestones and some clay. The possibilities with this are endless. Now to get this type of a design where I set the rhinestone in it, I've already done a few here, and these are basically just black clay. And I've put a little gold paint on the top of them just to give a different look. We can put it on that one. What you want to do with these is make sure that you measure your beads by putting them on the pads temporarily before you bake them. Because if they're too large, they won't work on this. They have to be the exact size. So don't bake your beads until you've tested them and make sure that the size is just fine. Now to create this flower, I'm just using black clay. And I'm just using a small round cutter. You can use any size cutter. You just want to have about the same amount of clay for each one. It doesn't really matter that it's perfect or it's the exact same size, because as you can tell, I'm pretty organic in doing this so that they don't look perfect. I actually want them to look like they're sort of flowers, but not flowers. I don't want them to be so perfect that you go right away, oh, that's a rose and it looks like a store-bought piece. And I'm just flattening this little snake that I made. Now I flatten it always on a scrap piece of paper. And if you're wondering why, it's because it's really hard to get it off the table when you flatten it that much. When you put it on a piece of scrap paper, it comes off real easy. It's a great thing to do with your old bills so that you feel like you're getting something back out of them. Now I'm just going to wrap my little rhinestone with that clay. And this can be a little tricky because this is a 5mm rhinestone, so it's a little bit fiddly to get it around the stone. But once you get it around the stone, and don't worry that it's perfect. Once you get it around the stone and you get that stone set in there, make sure you get the clay around it. Now you just wiggle it around it. Make some pleats and folds. And Mr. Rhinestone, you're supposed to cooperate for the video. And just fold it gently around that rhinestone, making it like a little cup. And that rhinestone is being a fiddly little booger, but that's okay. You can see he's tipped up. I'm just going to take my pen and push it down. And push it up from the bottom. And then we can capture her inside there. Actually, I'm going to leave this one that's got the fiddly one in it because I don't want it to look perfect. I want you to see what I do when I have a problem. And it's moved back up, so just take something else and push it down. And you can even put a little bit of the clay over that. We want it to look organic. We don't want it to look perfect. And then make sure it fits on your little piece here. The worst thing to do is to bake these and find out they don't fit. Trust me, I've learned the hard way. So once again, I'm just going to take my clay and these don't have to be the same size or width or anything, and then just press it on my paper. Whatever you do, don't leave it on the paper and then go have a cup of tea. It'll grab all the oil of the clay and you'll have to recondition it and add some oil to it. So once again, we're just wrapping the rhinestone. And he will be fiddly because I'm holding him in the air about 12 inches, so he's even more fiddly. I know you can all do this. Just wrap it. Once you get him captured in there, you're good. Now just add your little wiggles or ruffles, whatever you want to call them. I like the simple organicness of this, and I think the silver with the clear rhinestones will be really pretty. I'll add some silver paint to this one later. And just make sure that your rhinestone is captured well in there. And fiddle with your little petals. And that's it. Now I'm just going to bake these on a tile according to manufacturer's directions, and then we'll come back and glue them onto our bracelet. Now all my little pieces are baked, and all we have to do is glue them onto our bracelet blank. I find that E6000 seems to be the best product for this. It just has the best hold with the metal. And all I do is put a little dab, and I do them all at once. It's just easier to goop them all up. And once this sets for a second, like about 30 seconds, it seems to set up and be a little bit stickier. And now all I do is take each one of my little flowers and put them on the base and make sure that I have them in the direction or the way you want, because once they're on here, they're on here. This doesn't come off very easily. And now I'll just let this sit for about 15 or 20 minutes so it sets up and dries. I would do it for 24 hours before I wear it, but 15 or 20 minutes is fine before you finish it up. Now I created this one using just black clay, and I could have put the mica powder on it before I baked it because it was still sticky, but I wanted a different dry brush effect with, you can use a metallic paint, any type of metallic product. Inca Gold's one of my favorites, but I want to show you how to make your own if you don't have any of those metallic paints. This is just some Minwax. It's the water-based. I like the satin the best. I don't want it to be shiny. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of this because I don't need much. And that's why I just saved these little cups from the recycle bin, because you can just take a tiny amount like this. And I have just some mica powder. This is gold eyeshadow I've bought at the dollar store, because I want to show you that you can use anything you have. And I'm just making my own metallic paint basically. So if you have something else that you want to have a metallic paint for, you don't have to buy all those fancy metallic paints. You can make your own. And as you can tell, I don't have a whole lot here, but I don't have a large bracelet either. And this is just a makeup brush, so I don't have anything fancy. This is, you can use any kind of brush. I just want to give this a little hint of gold on the edges here. Side of the brush and giving a little hint. I think you have more control with the paint than you do with the powder. I like them both, but it's always nice to know different techniques. I'm not sure I want to paint the sides. I kind of like the contrast of the sides being black. I like just the way this edge looks, just highlighted. Yes, that's much more of the look that I was looking for. And you can see how it switched that plain black up completely and gave a completely different effect. Now, if you want it a little brighter, you can go back, because it's already started to dry, and just hit it again where you want it brighter. Now to get that same metallic effect on your beads, I like to string them. These are just leaf beads. I already have a tutorial on them. And I'm going to take my brush and I've dipped it in the paint, and then I'm trying to wipe as much off as I can get, because I don't want the paint to go into the crevices where I have it painted like a leaf. So I'm just gently brushing on the top. So I'm just taking my brush and just going right over that top there, and I'm not trying to get it perfectly. I want it to look a little bit haphazard. And it will completely change up these beads. And I do one side at a time, let them dry, and then do the other side. And to do the other side, I'll just flip it over because they're already dry. I like it just a little bit on here because it has that bronzy kind of vintage look. And you can do this with silver. You could do this with any color. Now, because I am who I am, I have to add beads someplace. You know that was going to happen. I sort of hinted it at the beginning. These little beads that I've added a little bit of mica powder to, that little metallic paint, I'm just putting a little crystal on the end here. So where you have these loops to connect them, I'm just doing one side with two of these little leaves. I like the way they look. They add a lot of movement. I really like movement in my jewelry. So fringe and anything that hangs and dangles really does it for me. But these are just simply head pins with a crystal. And I'm just taking, so take your round nose pliers, bend it towards you, and then back against you, making a nice little loop. And you can see my little loop. Then I just hook it on to the little loop that catches in between. And then just wrap it around that loop. Real easy. You can only do it on one side, which means the bracelet then will lay on one side. But I will continue to add the leaves and come back and show you what it looks like with the leaves on it, just so you can get an idea. And here you can see the difference. Just adding that little dangle of a bead just makes it look so much richer and fuller. Now you can see these have just a nice little clasp. They're real easy to work with because they just flip over like that. And this bracelet was this blank. And here's a different one that's that same thicker style. It's got a round back instead of a square back, but it's the same exact size. It's probably about a 10 millimeter. And this one, I've just taken some leaf slices with some rhinestones and put them in and made some tiny pods. So you can do any kind of design you can imagine. Now, with the smaller one, this one is more the size of a tennis bracelet. It's very narrow. I found this not to be the best polymer clay size, but if you just do these little punch-out flowers, it was quite cute. And I think it would make a great little girl's gift or a teenage gift. I like chunkier jewelry, so this really isn't my style. But if you like this type of a delicate piece, these are probably about a 5 millimeter pad. So let me show you size-wise. Here's the bigger ones, and then you have these larger 1-inch pads. And here's the same exact flower that we did with the rhinestone, only I just put a few more pieces around it. And I wanted to show you what you could do if you didn't have those rivolis. I just used a ball of clay in the middle that I put a few little canes on, and then I found these smaller rhinestones and just tucked them in for a little extra sparkle. So you don't have to necessarily do them exactly how I did, but I wanted to show you just a simple way that you could get a really neat look. These are, once again, the 10 millimeter pads, so they have definitely a larger look. And then the little daisies, this is the 10 millimeter pad. Here you can see the 10 millimeter pad, and there's a round one and a square one, and you can't really tell the difference on the front. So it doesn't really matter which ones you find, they're all workable. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I can't find the square ones or I need the round ones. No, they both work the same. And I think it's real important to know that. And in fact, on the top, if you notice, the chains, everything that linked them together pretty much look the same. It's just a matter of the shape of the pad, which you really can't tell once you've glued your pieces on. And if you didn't even want to make anything fancy, these are just those punched out little flowers. You can see even with the larger ones here, how they give just a really nice look. These are really quick and easy to do, so they're not, you can do a whole pile of these in an afternoon. They won't take you nearly as long as wiring them or beading with them. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I gave you lots of quick ideas, and thanks for watching. Now, even though I love the black on this bracelet, I want to show you how to add a little bit of a hint like I did to the gold bracelet. I'm going to take some Minwax water-based varnish. This is the satin. Just going to take a little bit of that, literally just a paintbrush full. That's all you need is a drop. And you can do this with any metallic type of powders. You can make your own paints. So I'm just going to take some silver-based, some friendly, I don't even think they make this anymore. I think this is probably 20 years old. This is just some silver mica powder. That's how much I use silver. It lasts forever. And I'm just going to take some and put it right in there. You could even use eyeshadow if you have some. And I'm just mixing it together to basically make a paint. And the difference between this and using the mica powder on wet clay is you have more control with this. That's the only difference. And you can buy mica powder or metallic paints also, but they're expensive and they're not available everywhere, so you could do this and get the exact same effect. I just want to touch the edges of these flowers. I just want to give a hint. And I really don't even want them to totally look like flowers. I want them to just give a suggestion of flower, I would say. And just touching the edge here. I don't even want it on the sides because I really do like that black. But you can see what a difference that makes. It really dresses it up quite a bit, and all I'm doing is just taking the edge of my brush and just touching it. And if you want it brighter, go back after it dries, and this dries in just a few seconds, and put another coat. And if you want, you can do the base of the flower, but I like just the tip of the flower. I think it gives more highlight. Sometimes I find when I put too much mica powder on, I'm almost sad. So here you can see I have, the purple one is metallic powders that I put on wet clay, and you don't have as much control. It kind of goes everywhere. Where with the black one, doing it, mixing it with the varnish, I have a lot more control, and you can see where it's just a little highlight on the edges. So it really depends on which look you're trying to achieve.